Overdrive, today we tell you why the new Alto K10 is the best budget buy, walk you through the first all-electric AMG in India, and check out Harley-Davidson's latest Sportster motorcycle. Hello and welcome to Overdrive. I am Sohini Dutt. The third generation Alto K10 is here after a decade and it now sits on a safer hardtech platform, has a lot more space than the Alto K10 that it replaces, and now it also is the best budget buy in the country. And why do I say so? It's time to find out.
When you think of Maruti Suzuki, what do you think of? Chances are it's going to be the Maruti 800, but there's another car that's as synonymous and as successful for the brand, and that's the Alto. The new-gen Alto finally moves to a new-gen platform. It's the hardtech platform that underpins other Maruti Suzukis with the exception of the new Brezza and upcoming Grand Vitara, which are on the more robust global seat platform. Essentially though, hardtech cars are made with higher tensile strength steel at their core for better impact absorption, better handling and more stability. With the change in platform, the new gen Alto has grown in dimensions too. While it's substantially larger than the Alto 800, the exterior dimensions aren't far removed from the previous gen Alto K10, which went off sale in 2020 in the transition to BS6. The wheelbase has gone up on both, however, which we'll get to since it's such an important part of the new Alto. The new Alto K10 looks familiar, doesn't it? With a lot of the new Celerio in its grille and upturned headlights and smallish taillights. We also see a bit of Hyundai i10 and Santro in it, but the end result is that it's cheery, inoffensive and mostly inconspicuous. The steel wheels are 13s and made downsized 145 section tires. Most people might not be bothered too much about that since the trade-off in handling will likely positively affect efficiency in the real world. What people will like a lot, however, is the improved cabin. You sit higher up on seats with better support with a better view out the airy windows thanks to a lower window line. The fit and finish is on par with others in the segment like the Espresso and Renault Kwid. The touchscreen infotainment, 4-speaker audio, steering mounted controls, rear parking sensors, they all bring the Alto K10 up to date, but with no rear view camera, power over BMs or rear wiper, that's about as much features as you get. Even the instrumentation nixes the tacho but does have trip meters, average consumption and distance to empty readouts. Jumping out of the front seats of the Alto into the rear kind of show you just how much bigger the car has become. I still find it hard to believe that this is an Alto just because of how much space I've got back here. The seat is set to my height, about 5'10" and a half, and there's a lot of room back here. It's quite surprising for an Alto. Now, there is some typical Alto traits. The headrests are fixed and they end at a slightly strange angle, but there is enough headroom and there is space for 3 in a pinch. Of course, there's more boot space than before as well, which means a lot more bags. The Alto K10 runs an updated BS6 compliant 1-litre 3-cylinder petrol engine with 67 PS and 89 Nm of torque mated to a 5-speed gearbox. Our impressions of the manual are first. So what does this Alto K10 feel like to drive? In a lot of ways, it feels familiar, but it also feels more mature, more grown up. Slightly heavier response from the steering. The ride quality feels a lot more composed. It does feel like a typical Maruti in that you feel the bumps, but then again you don't feel the bumps, if you know what I'm saying. Compared to what I remember the previous Alto feeling like, you do sit a lot higher up in this, but that does mean that you've got great visibility. Now the seat isn't adjustable for height considering the segment it sits in. The steering isn't adjustable either, but everything just falls to hand. It feels familiar, it feels like the Alto that you've grown up driving. Of course, the Alto feels most at home when you're navigating these tiny bi-lanes, because given its diminutive size and the fact that this K10 engine has enough low-down torque, you can get away with pottering around in second gear. And again, tight corners like this, just twirl on the wheel and you're good to go. Now obviously with an Alto that's grown in wheelbase and space, you want to know how good it is when it comes to maneuvering. So, narrow road, no reverse camera, just the mirrors to rely on. This slightly heavy, very natural feeling steering does come into play, where there is several turns lock to lock. Will it make it? Oh yeah, it did, with a lot of room to spare. The Alto K10's always been considered a little bit of a pocket rocket, and when you put your foot down, you feel that enthusiasm. Now of course you don't know what revs the engine is doing, but it does feel nice to really slot it into another gear, and that shift quality just feels right. At triple-digit highway speeds, you do have to watch out over bumps because the Alto can get a little upset if you're not careful. A quick spin in the AMT equipped car told us that the auto gear shift box has come a long way. It's perfectly capable of city driving without too many jerks, save for the odd hiccup in fueling midway through the rev range. Getting away from standstill still felt smooth enough with none of the off-the-line jerks, though aggressive acceleration does introduce some head nod between shifts. While we weren't able to fully test the Alto K10 to usual overdrive standards, a quick V-Box test in the manual variant showed a 0 to 100 kmph in under 15 seconds, all the while feeling quicker than that time thanks to the responsiveness of the engine. In our brief city efficiency testing of the AGS variant, we achieved over 21 kmph. Note, the AGS variant has a better claimed ARAI tested efficiency than the manual itself. With a difference of Rs 60,000 to the smaller previous gen Alto 800, the Alto K10 makes sense as an upgrade considering how much more of everything you get. On the other hand, the Renault Kwid 800cc starts about Rs 65,000 more than the new K10, but doesn't drive as nice, though it one-ups the Alto in other ways. There's a smaller price to pay to upgrade to an Espresso, which offers much the same experience in a slightly taller package. But for the budget conscious, what you're left with is a new Alto K10 that's bigger and better than before, making it an easy pick at this end of the segment.
For almost 2 decades, the Maruti Suzuki Alto K10 was the largest selling hatchback in India, but it hasn't been the same since the past 2 years. In fact, we do hope that this model can bring in the numbers for the brand once again in the micro hatchback segment. We'll take a very quick break here on the show, but coming up on the other side, we acquaint you with the first ever electric AMG from Mercedes-Benz to have launched in the country. Stay with us, you're watching Overdrive. Welcome back, you're watching Overdrive. Now, it's been a big week for Mercedes-Benz in India. They have launched their first ever all-electric AMG in the country, starting at 2.45 crore rupees. Now, Tuhin will get to all the details about this car, but I also caught up with Martin Schwenk to find out whether there are more AMG EVs that we can expect in India in the future.
Now we've been waiting for the EQS to come to India for a while, but the wait seems to have been worth it because what you see here is the Mercedes-AMG EQS53, the first all-electric AMG. Now don't go by this 53 moniker because this EQS is right up there with the maddest that AMG has to offer. So in standard form you have about 667 PS and 950 Newton meters, but specify the Dynamic Plus package and with launch control on, that jumps to 771 PS and over 1000 Newton meter. And in this mode, it will do 0 to 100 in 3.4 seconds and reach a 250 kmph top speed. And in the standard mode, it drops marginally to 3.8 and 220 kmph. Now the EQS AMG 53 uses AMG specific motors which give you the added performance through more wiring. And that wiring lets more current pass through, and that's how you get the added performance along with the software tweaks. Of course, the battery pack is the same 107.8 kilowatt-hour unit that you find in the standard EQC, but range has reduced with the performance focus. So now you have a maximum of 580 kilometers. And along with the other changes made, what has remained the same is the structure, the same EVA2 architecture that you see in the standard EQS. Now the general look of this EQS AMG is largely similar to the standard one because it is a heavily revised version of that car. And you have that same aerodynamic efficiency here. It's not as good as the standard one. This one is 0.23 compared to the 0.2 of the standard EQS, but again, it's very close. Now, as for the changes specific to this AMG model, of course, you have the same bulbous sort of streamlined look for the sake of efficiency, but you get these digital lights as standard, and this full width LED light signature, which is an EQ trait. Now these Pan America grills have been a signature part of every AMG that's come before, and that has been carried over to an extent with these vertical strakes. Again, another signature AMG trait is these fins here, and like in other AMG, it is functional, but the use of that is that it creates a sort of curtain over these front wheels, so there's less drag around the front wheel. Coming below, you can see that those glossback elements are repeated with this more pronounced splitter here. Now the AMG specific changes continue to the side. You get those typical AMG colors like this selenite grey, which looks so striking in every AMG, it's still here again. And you get these massive alloy wheels. You get a choice of 20 and 21 inches. And they look impressive as they always do in AMGs. But as you can see with this ring over here, it's again an aerodynamically optimized design to reduce drag. Now another change to the side is this slightly more pronounced sill here with this gloss black. You also get an AMG specific all-wheel drive system, which becomes more rear biased in the Sport Plus mode. Now that mode is specific to this version too, and along with that you also get air suspension. Now this is quite similar to what you see in IC engined AMGs, but it reacts a bit quicker, so it's even more reactive to changes in the road surface. Now once you're inside the EQS, of course this massive 56-inch hyper screen is what catches your eye immediately. It's a flat plane of glass right from one end to the other, and it's got some crazy specs. It's got 8 GB of RAM and so on. So it's pretty much 3 big tablets right in front of you. And you would think that such a big screen would be a bit difficult to use, but the buttons are large, especially these climate control buttons. They're large, they fall to hand easily. The menus are very similar to say an iPad, so again, it's very easy to use, although we won't know how it is until we drive it. And of course, it's still an electric S-Class, so you have that same level of plushness. Everything you touch is either leather or a micro suede material, which are again specific to this AMG. These AMG seats, these are specific to the Eqs53, and you have these carbon fiber touches here, this stitching over here, which I'm sure you can spec up in as many colors as you want. More AMG touches, this very typical AMG steering wheel with the logo here, these two ridges which point to it being an AMG, these toggle switches which we've come to like so much. More carbon fiber here, a big sunroof. Now specific to this EQS AMG is a Sport Plus driving mode. Like in other AMGs, you can change the drive modes, the suspension and so on, but an AMG is always known for its distinct oral character, and that has been continued in these sound modes. So either you can choose between balanced, which is a more softer setting, sport when you're just cruising maybe on a road trip, and when you really want to go fast and feel the rush of it maybe, then you have this powerful sound mode. And that just changes with the drive modes as well, like in any other AMG. Now the EQS's 400 volt electrical architecture lets it charge at up to 200 kilowatts, which means you can add about 300 kilometers of range in 19 minutes from a 200 kilowatt charger. Along with this, Mercedes-Benz is also widening its charging network, and there will be 180 kilowatt as well as 60 kilowatt fast chargers throughout the country very soon after this car launches. Now for the price, this EQS53 costs 2.45 crores, and the first batch will have 50 units coming to India as soon as bookings open today.
Mr. Shrunk, thank you so much for joining us on CNBC TV 18 on Overdrive. Big day for Mercedes-Benz, the first ever electric AMG now in India. How many bookings can we expect? How many have been allocated for India? And also, when will the deliveries begin?
Yeah, I mean, I should maybe say, before we go into these details, I would clearly say for us it's a great moment today to start with an EQS AMG 53. This car is a niche car. You saw the price, 2.45 crore. It's definitely for the aspiring, high-tech loving, sportiness enthusiast, and that's what we're doing with that. And so it will be relatively low numbers, but it opens the hearts and the minds of a lot of customers, I'm convinced. So very low numbers at this stage. Yeah, say 2-digit figures we're talking here. Okay. Yeah, but then subsequently with the local production will go significantly higher. We also go a little bit lower in price, and that will definitely have a wide appeal to many customers then.
What about the AMG brand in particular? What is the plan? Will we see more EVs coming in from the AMG brand?
Yes, AMG will become an electric brand as well. We will have conventional AMG launches. We're not stopping, not on AMG and not on Mercedes core brand. We still will have new products coming, but the future, and if I go now 24, 5, 6, 7 and so on, also AMG will move into an electric brand.
For India?
For India, we will also go that direction for sure.
Well, Mercedes is on a roll with a product offensive once again. Up next, the Mercedes EQS will launch in the country just next month. And thereafter, we will see the 7-seater SUV, the EQB from the brand launching. We'll take a very quick break here on the show, but coming up on the other side, we will acquaint you with Harley-Davidson's latest Sportster motorcycle. Welcome back, you're watching Overdrive. Now, is Harley-Davidson's new motorcycle, the Sportster S, a revelation, or is it wandering around in the dark here in India? It's time for us to find out.
So it's been almost 10 years now that American bike manufacturer Harley-Davidson has been seen to be experimenting with its motorcycles. Now it's tended to drift away from the traditional burly chrome-clad cruisers of the past and cater to the more modern motorcycles of today. Cut back to 2013 where Harley-Davidson came out with the Livewire electric motorcycle, which now Livewire is a completely different spin-off brand on its own. And a year later, Harley-Davidson came out with the Street 750, the street-based motorcycle, which not a lot of people really took a liking to. A couple of years later, Harley-Davidson introduced the big Pan America 1250, the adventure motorcycle that honestly no old-school Harley-Davidson aficionado ever saw coming in their wildest dreams or even their nightmares. And now, here we have the brand's next step in evolution, the Sportster S. Now, although Harley-Davidson is saying this is the next step in evolution, is this bike really an evolution or a revelation, so to speak, out here in India? Well, let's find out. Now, let's start with the way this bike looks. It's a lot more compact, a lot more chunky, a lot more muscular, and boy, does it look attractive. Up ahead, you have this big, nice, chunky 160 by 70 section 17-inch tire. It adds a great deal of bulk to the front end. Come up ahead, you have a nice solid 43mm fork, an upside-down fork. Not a lot of travel out there. You have an all-LED headlight unit with bulbs, indicators. Coming further up to the handlebars, well, you have this nice flat handlebar. It's sort of like a flat tracker handlebar, which will have you seated a little forward set. Well, but it's nice and wide apart, nice bar and mirrors on there. And the display, well, you have this 4-inch TFT display, something, once again, that traditionally breaks away from the old school Harley-Davidsons that you've been accustomed to seeing over the course of time. It's an all-digital display. Coming back to the tank, you have a nice 12-litre unit, which should give you a good amount of mileage out on the highway. You should be able to cover a good amount of ground.
Under the tank, you have a big 1200cc Revolution Max engine, which is the real highlight of this Harley-Davidson motorcycle. It's almost identical to the unit that powers the big Pan America ADV. You will also notice the suffix T to the engine's name, and that stands for torque. So while with the Pan America, you'll have to shift down a gear to take on tricky terrain, with this bike, well, it's designed to rip up streets. So peak torque is more accessible in the mid-range of the power band. Like with the big ADV bike, the engine out here is a stress member in the frame, and that helps reduce weight.
Now this bike is powered by the Revolution Max engine that you have in the Pan America, the big adventure bike, and there's a big mountain of torque. There's a good amount of power as well, 120 PS. It's slightly lower, around 30 PS lower than what you have with the Pan America. But in terms of torque, yes, it's around the same amount of torque, around 127 Nm, and power delivery is just phenomenal. Low down the power band, not so much so, around 2000 RPM, short shifting at that rev limit. Well, it does get a bit clunky, but once the needle goes north of that, man, this thing just flies.
The Sportster S comes with a host of tech and riding aids that includes ride modes like road, rain, sport, and there's even some customizable options that allow you to set the engine maps, engine braking, traction control, cornering ABS and so on as per your preference. You even have Bluetooth connectivity and cruise control. But the ride modes are my favorite. In sport mode, this bike just goes ballistic and you'll have to really hold on tight to stay on the bike, which is exhilarating and unlike any other Harley Davidson I've ever ridden before.
So now in terms of ride and handling, as you can see, the ergonomics of it all, it will have your legs a bit forward set. This is the stock position, which is rather very cruisery. And the handlebars, well, it will have you hunched forward a bit if you're the same height as me, around 5'9". And it can get a bit cumbersome over long distances, honestly. You do have the option of another set of foot pegs where it's a little more mid-mounted, but that will cost you extra. That's a big setback with this motorcycle according to me, because in all honesty, Harley Davidson have tried their best with this particular setup in terms of the chunky wheels at both ends, the weight of this bike around 230 kg. Given its wheel size alone, well, it's not going to be the best of handlers. Tuck it into a corner, it's not really all that comfortable. It just wants to sit up back straight. Lean into a corner, get off the gas. It does feel a little uneasy and out of place, but you always have to be on throttle, and with this particular machine. The ground clearance, not the best. It's at least 90 mm of ground clearance, so it's really low. Speed breakers can often be an issue. And of course, the suspension setup. Now, if you have a look at the rear and the front, not a lot of play once again. And this will take a toll on your back if you hit a bump. Given Indian road conditions, that's inevitable. And although the suspension settings are adjustable, you can adjust for preload, rebound and compression. Well, there's not a lot that you can really work with out there, and you will feel the brunt of it. If this bike doesn't bottom out, you are going to feel the brunt of it on your back and your spine. Out in some place like Delhi, this motorcycle, the Sportster S, will set you back by around 16.5 lakh rupees. Well, that's for the standard black colored variant. This alternate colored variant, like the maroon, will set you back by 15,000 extra. Now, is this bike a real revelation in a country for India? Well, in all honesty, no, it is not. So at the end of the day, it looks fantastic. It has a lot of visual appeal. It feels nice to ride over short distances, but over long distances, not so much. Although, if you are a Harley aficionado, you will really want to get your hands on this. It is like nothing the company has ever come out with before. It is very unique, it is sporty, but at the end, it's not the best in its category.
Well, with that, it's time for us to wrap up this week's edition of Overdrive. But remember, you can stay in touch with the team through Facebook, Twitter, as well as YouTube. And you can follow our latest updates on Instagram. We'll see you next week. Until then, goodbye. Many thanks for watching. Drive and ride safe.